Perfect. All right. Thank you so much for staying here. It's been a long day for many of you. You might have been like wandering around the different exhibition halls. But we are going to start now the second day of the Digital Summit, which is an opportunity to delve deeper into the theme that I propose as curator. My name is Gonzalo Herrero, and I'm the curator of Art Dubai Digital 2025. The theme that I set for this year is After the Technological Sublime. And I invited galleries and artists to respond to this theme. This theme is reclaiming the concept of the sublime as it was revived from the Greek by the intellectuals in the 17th century in response to like those trips that they were doing at that time and traveling all over the world and visiting, in some cases, like nature, vast nature for the first time doing the Grand Tour. When they were encountering this new nature for them, they were having like polarized feelings of fear, but also wonder. They were mesmerized by that beauty, but they couldn't understand how it had been formed and what was the role of human in front of that nature. If we translate that idea of the sublime to today, we can define the moment that we are living as a technological sublime. That is defined by all the technological advancements that we are experiencing on a daily basis, from artificial intelligence to quantum technology to robotics. It's a very complex technology that is advancing at a pace that we've never seen before and that we can barely understand. Sometimes artists, and we've seen that in previous editions, are focusing too much on the discourse around those technologies, trying to understand and unravel the complexity behind those technologies, and that is like distracting them from discussing about issues that are more important and that are defining our time, which are connected to social inequality, with politics, to environmental challenges that we are facing as a society and as a planet. When I invited the galleries to respond to the theme, many of them did. Many others were like taking a detour. We also commissioned a few installations that you might have seen on the common areas that are connected to the theme. But what I saw is like most of the responses were trying to unravel that technological sublime through the lens of nature and trying to understand environmental ecology through the lens of that technology. For that reason, yesterday we have a few sessions that were trying to unpack that correlation that is generating a lot of friction, because we shouldn't forget that like most of the environmental impact that we as a human species are generating is due to this increasing demand of technology. And what we see here are friction that artists are trying to respond to. Yesterday, we had a session with Jacopo Di Zera, Breakfast, and Anya Soliman, 3 artists that have been commissioned for this edition of Art Dubai to present installations across the fair. And we were trying to start unpacking like that pressure and that tension. And today we are continuing the conversation with 2 other artists, with Sofia Crespo and with Cullen Williams, who are also exploring through their work that relation between digital art and nature. To moderate the session today, we have Stefanie de Regel, who is the head of development of TAEX. TAEX is one of the key galleries on a global scale that are promoting and supporting digital art. They are returning this year with an amazing booth that you can see in the exhibition hall, in the main exhibition hall, with work by Krista King, who is going to be also speaking later today. And also like some other, they were like, it was very good collaborating with them because they had like a very positive response to the theme. But to introduce today's session, I'm going to hand over to Stefanie. Thank you, Stefanie, and the speaker for being here today. Make sure to prepare your question because there will be like 5 minutes at the end to like make some questions. So don't be shy. We don't need to know everything about technology and about nature and ecology. And just, this is a group of squirrel friends, and we need to share all these uncertainties in these forums because otherwise there is no purpose for that. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Gonzalo, for your kind introduction. Good evening, everyone. on a Saturday evening to come and talk about these wonderful topics. Well done. Thank you so much for being present here. So we are going to talk about art, nature, and the digital frontier. So today we gathered to explore something both incredibly familiar and endlessly mysterious: the complexity of nature, the human gaze, and the technological intervention. So nature operates on layered complexities, cycles, patterns, self-regulating systems that seem both chaotic and at the same time perfectly orchestrated, but in reality much more complex than any of us could imagine, right? So digital art offers in this space really new tools, right? An exciting new chapter, a chapter has been going on since the 60s, where the logic of machines meets the organic logic of life, and where representation can start a dialogue about what is natural, what is artificial, and how we perceive complexity in that space. So without much further ado, today we have wonderful Sofia Crespo and Cullen Williams, and so they have both a different approach to these all these questions and these forms of expression. So maybe we'll start with Ben. You can explain how you approach, like maybe the origin. How did you start? You know, do you have a microphone? Yeah. Okay.
Is this working? Yeah. How did I start? I started actually. I did sculpture originally at the Royal College of Art, and after that I actually started working a lot with photography and a lot of analog methods, and then slowly I just started looking at kind of other modes of technology and how they could be intertwined in my work. So I don't really kind of, I guess, exclusively use digital work. It's one of the kind of many different modes and mediums that kind of are present within my work, from kind of, you know, from drawing all the way through to kind of artificial intelligence.
And what is the most interesting, like, that you do with digital, like, compared to the other mediums that you use?
I think if you talk about, I think digital in my work is such a broad spectrum. I think we can talk about it from, you know, digital photography to machine learning to generative video, and I think it's just different ways of accessing and presenting a complex subject in a way that might be slightly unfamiliar to that original thing you're looking at. So to try to challenge the viewer's understanding of the subject with a different medium.
I see you've prepared a presentation. Do you have the clicker?
Yeah, so I can just stand up here if that's okay. I'll just put it on top of this laptop. Are these on here? Yeah.
Too many microphones.
Is the clicker somewhere? Yep, so obviously just to kind of present myself again, I'm an artist. I'm based in London, but actually most of my work pulls from landscapes outside of the UK. And I primarily look at the human-made spectacle of the alterations to our natural landscapes and kind of corporeal world. The corporeal world, our bodily world, is kind of made up of our flesh, guts, and matter. And I look at this through kind of different lenses and technological devices, through different medium and also different modes of presentation, slipping outside of the gallery space into unconventional ways of potentially presenting art, and also questioning what actually is a piece of art and how do we understand that. So I also like just to document our natural landscapes and how they've been transformed, as well as actively using technology to alter imagery of natural landscapes themselves, to see them in a new light. So recently, I've increasingly been seeing the human body as part of kind of a primordial artifact of humanity that's in our 21st century. And kind of how our kind of society shifts and how that impacts not only our lived environment, but how that also impacts our understanding and kind of what we do with our bodies. What's that? Next line. There we go. So an experience that had a kind of a profound impact on me was an expedition I did to Antarctica with the polar explorer Robert Swan I'd long loved the photographs of Herbert Ponting since I was young. He was the photographer on Captain Scott's ill-fated expedition to Antarctica, these amazing black and white images of icebergs. And so I was invited by Captain Swan to accompany him on a research expedition to the Antarctic Peninsula. And on the way there, we passed the Larsen B ice shelf, and I took these photographs, and it's an area of ice the size of California that broke off from Antarctica. I took it in 2016. And then I thought, okay, the world is kind of dissolving in front of my eyes. So I turned them black and white, and then I used an algorithm to recolor them using kind of real-world knowledge in terms of what would we kind of understand the past as being in the present through the eyes of technology, recoloring the past in the present. But there's a tension here, using technology to preserve the past, but indeed the thing that has fundamentally led to its decline, and it's a concept that I've actually kind of built upon over the last few years. So is this play? Yeah. So a few years after this work in 2020, I revisited the footage that I shot of the Larsen B ice shelf, and I kind of built this, well, we made this kind of bespoke algorithm in 2020 that could make video from my video using machine learning. So it was closed loop. It looked at the icebergs, looked at this footage that I took of Antarctica, and made an infinite amount of footage, an infinite amount of Antarctic landscapes, rebuilding the lost landscapes digitally. But what I was interested in this work was the imperfect versions. It was the fluid and liquid landscapes rather than perfect reproductions. And with AI, that actually I think is interesting is the lack of perfection and the weirdness that can appear. And I actually think it's sad now that AI, the algorithms have got so good, have become so polished, all of that kind of interest and strangeness has kind of been pushed out to the side. So we're in a place of obviously still, we've always kind of developed our own algorithms, but that's kind of increasingly more kind of, I think, important if you're using this medium. So I think especially this image, these things become slightly slippery, and often when you think of the digital, it kind of can move into something that feels kind of like a Disney Pixar movie. It's very polished, it's like kind of a Sims world. So I try to move out of that and challenge your preconceptions of what is digital. So here's in a 3-channel installation. Here's in Riyadh in Saudi Arabia outside MISC Institute, and here we put it in Piccadilly Circus. It was in K-pop Square in Seoul, and it was also in Shinjuku Crossing in Tokyo. And I'm drawn to these places. Last summer I found someone that was crazy enough to take me to the top of Mount Etna when it was erupting, the biggest eruption, I think, in about 20 years. And I wanted to capture it on heat cameras. In a similar way that obviously heat cameras can protect the local villages, understanding the kind of the movement flows of the lava. So we went up there and tried to see technology through different ways that we might not be familiar with in humans. So in the first person, this footage kind of becomes frantic and eerie. It's a moment of possible disaster. And played backwards, it kind of almost becomes one gigantic breath. The world is a body, not too dissimilar to our own. And it's kind of a modification of the human world that is outside of our own capabilities, outside of what our human eyes can do. And I also like to document things. So this is a film made in Spain, and this was looking at the alteration of the landscapes due to water, and especially chlorine, and the impacts on that. Here we have digging for minerals to create an element of safety, chlorine in water for swimming pools for kids and adults, but also something that is fundamentally used in war, and it's incredibly dangerous. So, as I said earlier, I kind of see all of these mediums as kind of one continual technological continuum. So here we have 35mm films of dams in Spain that have dried up, and then I ran them through chlorine baths in order to destroy the thing that was already being made, that this technology was kind of inherently on this kind of self-destructive loop. And then here in this film, documenting fragments of kind of of technological fragments within the landscapes in Brazil. And this kind of sets natural destruction against a kind of hedonistic bodily world of carnivals and parties. This is only a clip of that, though. And this is obviously, these are fragments of these kind of verdant rainforest interrupted with these kind of fragments of technological intervention. Here's a video installation of the work. I also like to create technological structures themselves and insert them into landscapes and awkward spaces, being disconnected in the spaces that they're placed. So this is a raft I built with the musician artist called Gaika, and we floated on the Ionian Sea off Sicily, while the audience watched the sound-responsive lights react to a live electronic performance from the shore. So you can see on the right-hand side, you have this kind of, this beautiful cove that is actively kind of altering and changing this pristine environment. And I've collaborated with the choreographer, Sir Wayne McGregor, a number of times, and through these collaborations, they brought me closer to questioning the human body and the corporeal place within our modern worlds, something so primordial and visceral. In this project, Wayne McGregor and Google created a tool to create artificial choreography trained on his archive. I then developed a work, and I hijacked the generated choreography, and for this I outputted the code and created movement in a whole series of different visual ways, asking the question, if a computer was to dance, how would it dance? Rather than an emulation of the human body and its limitations, which just are hands, legs, and head and torso. And so this was shown in LA as part of a company Wayne McGregor performance, which was accompanied live by the Los Angeles Philharmonic Orchestra. Here's a bit of the footage there. Here you can see in this, obviously you have these kind of, this code raining down on the actual dancers, which obviously they're dancing a hybrid of AI-generated choreography and also human-created choreography completely enmeshed into one performance. And here, finally, you have the human dancers looking at the kind of AI-generated dancer on the back of the screen, and you have the live orchestra playing beneath.
Just to be mindful on time, I think we should pass on to Sofia, so then we can have the comparison.
Sure.
Continue the dialogue.
I'll wrap through these slides. So here you've got these, I'll just go through these. So this, you've got some kind of human technological bodies. This is a technological instrument. And then recently bringing bodies and landscapes into one slide. And then finally, this is a kind of huge body suspended in front of an orchestra, which then became a projection screen from one of my video works, which then turned and became flat to become a landscape itself. And then the body and the kind of machine becoming one. And then the Venice Biennale last year, kind of developing some of these themes, we turned a cinema into a theatre using the cinema screen at the back. And looking at the kind of relationship, the kind of atomized relationship of the body turning into explosions, turning into dissolved matter. And finally, everyone collapsing and forming into one person. Thank you.
I think it's super impressive how you're, like, the multidisciplinary approach, and how you're blending like dance, the human body, the nature, past, present, future, like the non-perfection of it, yet coming finally to a beautiful message. I think that's really powerful.
Thank you.
So then we have Sofia. It's a completely different way of approaching it. And I always wonder if you have biological, academic background, or because what you've created with your work is just simply mesmerizing, and I'll let you show more so and tell us how it all started for you.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's kind of, I didn't have a formal study in biology or computer science, even though I wanted to. And I would have really loved to study biology and computer science together. But that didn't happen because I chose to make art and pursue a career as an artist. But I kind of, with AI, neural networks, machine learning, I kind of started by thinking about automation, and then thinking like, what's automation taken to the extreme? And for me, like working visually, I thought, oh, that would be like to extract like visual patterns. And that led me to a project that is completely different to everything I'm going to show here, but which was more about like a speculative AI, where I was thinking, you know, Google has a lot of my browser data. What is it seeing that I'm not seeing, you know? I want to see that. And then that led me to think about what AI tools are available for me to use. And simultaneously, I was taking a lot of pictures with my microscope. This is just one of them. This is the oldest one I have, the first one. And this is a popular model, so maybe many people have it. But at some point, I felt like, okay, I have all these pictures that I took with my microscope, and I have this neural network that I'm just learning to use. Why don't I combine them? And so, okay, that leads me to this, which is the reason why I love the microscope, is because it's really a technology that changed the way that we perceive the world. Knowing that the world is made of microstructures and that there's like tiny life forms living, and being able to observe them, that radically changes our perception of the world. And to me, machine learning is doing that as well. It's allowing us to extract patterns from data at a large scale that if we had to do manually, it would be really tedious. And that's one of the reasons why it's so powerful for science. But I became interested in making these kind of weird creatures. I really didn't have a reason for it when I started. I didn't have an artist statement or anything to say. I was just interested. And these were my early experiments in 2018 from a series called Neural Zoo. And over the years, I continued developing that. But at some point, I obviously became aware that I wasn't the first human being trying to make like chimerical creatures. Like I was just one of many people before me and simultaneously that were creating these kind of non-existing, you know, depictions of animals, plants, whatever. And so we all know maybe that in the Middle Ages, this was a big thing that that people did both intentionally and unintentionally. And eventually, what became interesting for me was looking back in time at how we depicted the natural world and taking that as a data, as a way of thinking, okay, what patterns can I extract from how humans looked at the world before? And so I started just playing around with public domain data sets from natural history illustrations from the 18th and 19th century mainly. And I started this series called Artificial Natural History, which I'm still working on it. It feels like it's still ongoing for me because, well, it's part of a larger project. I thought of it more as a book rather than as a series of images in itself. And then eventually, what I started thinking is what other technologies changed the way that we see the world, and clearly photography was a really big one. And in the 19th century, Anna Atkins was a huge pioneer printing using the cyanotype technique. And she was actually the first person to publish a book of photographs. And I thought this is really fascinating to see like a woman that was using a technology that at the time was like cutting edge to extract impressions from plants and specimens that she was studying as a botanist. And so I became interested in kind of printing the things that I was generating with the algorithms, but in an analog way, and then scanning it to create videos with it. So that's what you're seeing. That's from a series called Temporally Uncaptured. I'm realizing I will definitely not have time to show everything I have in this presentation.
This is the process of how you do your research, right? And how you create your work, that what we're seeing here.
Yeah, exactly. So I just made this screen recording. It's just one example of a workflow. I'm interested in playing with different techniques, and I always say that I think AI is not just one thing. That's something fascinating about it, is that there are many different architectures. There are like different designs that fit different kind of data. And I think sometimes like thinking about it as a one single thing kind of narrows too much the picture. And so, but the reason why I show this is because, well, maybe some of the things I'm showing are, you know, sound glamorous, like I'm just sitting on my computer, you know, I don't know. But really a lot of the time is spent debugging and looking at this terminal output of a model training and kind of waiting. So in a way it's an exercise in patience as well. Computing power has changed a lot, really. Like the computational power that I had in 2018 when I was training those models versus what we have available today, you know, there's been a lot of changes in cloud computing.
And how do you deal with those changes? Like, for example, you're working on a project, you've done a lot of research on it, and then there's another iteration of an AI model that comes out and everything, like, you know, is upside down, and then you have to continue. Have you experienced like problems with that in the past, or is it exciting? Is it something that you think is a plus?
Yeah, I mean, at first I felt like, oh, there's a new thing. I have to play with it and work with it. But then at some point I realized I actually don't. Like, I can even go back in time and use really old code, you know, and I'm still actually using code from 2018, exactly the same way that I used to run it in 2018. And maybe I improved the resolution, but I'm still interested in that. Exactly what Ben was saying, like a lot of the new AI developments are very focused on, you know, removing this kind of like uncanny feeling that things have. But really, it's a place that's really fascinating, actually, this place of the artifacts, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you have more slides? Or
yeah. So I just briefly wanted to talk about data as part of the process of the work. And the way I see it is, data for me is also part of the craft of the work. So this is an example. This is me diving in the Beagle Channel last year in Argentina. And part of that was, you know, like an exercise for me in this kind of like embodied experience of being there, you know, being submerged with the ecosystem that I'm interested in talking about. And this is also from expeditions. It's just to show like we're listening underwater with a hydrophone, but we're also working with scientific data, and sometimes the scientific data isn't very pretty necessarily, you know? Like what you see here on the right is actually tiny microscopic poo. And we literally made an entire work about that, about microscopic poo. And that's something that I find fascinating to kind of think like, it kind of, my partner, Felican, who we work together as a duo, he always says that this is a bit like land art in a way, because we just take what is available and we work within those limitations, knowing that we're not engineers, so we kind of make do with what we have, you know? And yeah, so this is another example to show like from data from the Barcelona Supercomputing Center. I think it's really beautiful because you see the change of seasons in the hemisphere. So this is the temperature of the ocean's surface. But you don't have to work just with scientific data. We can also, you know, like craft the data ourselves. And this is something that I think is also really fun and exciting to do. So it's part of a project with artist Anna Riedler, where we actually use the chlorophyll in the plants as a developer for photographic paper. And so what you see here is like the kind of how we made it, and this is the data set. This is like one image in the data set. But maybe I'm running out of time.
Yeah,
So,
but maybe just explain this, because it's really a fascinating project of yours, and then we'll go to the question, next question.
yeah, and as I was talking about data, eventually I started thinking, you know, we're always very kind of focused in talking about what AI can do, but what about like what AI actually cannot do? And one of the things that it cannot do is extract patterns from data it doesn't have. So I became interested in this idea of like gap filling, how we're trying to kind of like fill in the gaps, but really is inaccurate. So here what I did was really try to recreate existing species, but they were accidentally inaccurate because the model didn't have enough data about them. So what you see here on the right, that's the original species, but the model we trained didn't have that data about this particular species. So when it read mangrove finch, this is what it made.
I think it's fascinating that both of you like are not, most people think like, yeah, they're creating digital art, they're sitting on their computer and they're imagining all these natural forms, but you're actually going to these places, you're in touch with nature, you're making these journeys, and then you're coming back and implementing all that, you know, and it's actually interesting because technology is rapidly changing, and as you said, nature is rapidly changing. So what is next for you guys? Like, what is the next big project that you're working on? Like for you, Ben, what is the next chapter? What do we have to look out for?
A project actually I've just started, and it's going to get off the ground soon, is it's actually not digital at all. But there's an endangered pig in the Philippines called the warty pig, and I've been working with a charity, and I've been working with an architectural practice, and it's going to be the basis of a video work looking at basically the capture of these pigs and the kind of the preservation of these pigs and the reintroduction of them into the wild when needed. But in order to do this, we need to basically build the sanctuary first. So right now I've been designing these cabins out of concrete, thatched roofs and bamboo. So for the residents to stay, we've been designing disinfectant things, and then then the pens almost become this kind of large kind of thing of land art of fences that kind of crest this ridge. And so that's basically the preliminary work in order for us to basically make the video work, but also at the same time we're actually doing kind of a positive intervention. So I'm trying to kind of challenge myself in terms of what I would consider kind of an artwork and how kind of expansive that can be.
I think that's amazing, because not only are you creating art, right, you're also like putting a spotlight on a sensitive topic like an extinct species. But then, as we saw before, like, I mean, both of your works, and we're running a bit out of time, but you've done also in Barcelona, Sofia, like this beautiful projection. So the digital makes it, global, and you can show these works in Korea, you can show them in Piccadilly Circus, and that's amazing about digital, that once you create something that has a really loud message, it's instantly global, but not global from our computers, but also on all these beautiful platforms that we're showing. And later on, Krista Kim will be talking with Outernet about this also, which is a beautiful immersive space, and I think that's very powerful about the digital element. So I see that we have a bit more than 5 minutes left, but I'm sure there are some interesting questions from the audience. Does anyone have any questions? Wait, I'll give you a microphone maybe so people can hear.
This is a question for Sofia. I'm not too sure if you answered this. I came a bit late, but I'm just curious about the models that you trained. I imagine you would have used a pre-trained model as opposed to pre-training from scratch. If that's the case, I'm curious if you used like a fine-tuned model there, or was that like low-rank adaptation? What was the kind of the architecture for training that model?
So which work specifically, because the last one was actually trained from scratch. And that only happened because I was given computing resources by Meta, Facebook, to do that. Because I don't have like a huge number of GPUs myself. So that was trained on 35 GPUs. And even with that, it took over a month to train from scratch. So it was kind of painful. So for me, it became important to not just like have this, just one model, but actually like I'm still using it for other things. And I feel like, okay, all these computing resources went to this one model. I want to, explore what else is available. But what the previous images that I showed, that was made using like what is known as neural style. And that takes a very small data set, so it's actually not a pre-trained model. It just is a kind of architecture, it's a convolutional neural network that can use a very small data set. So you can give it 20 images and it generates variations of that. So you don't necessarily have to use pre-trained models. That's not the only way of working, but that can be used. There's nothing wrong with that as well.
Yeah, no, very impressive. Thank you.
Any other questions? I knew you would have a question.
Question from me. So you are both taking inspiration from nature to develop your work, but also like communicating a very powerful message about like the fragility of the natural world that is equally inspiring you. What do you think is like the role of artists in the current climatic emergency that we are facing? What do you think you can contribute to your work, to that narrative and to that issue?
Do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, sure. I think for me, it's a lot about processing grief. So it started as feeling very intense, like ecological anxiety, and thinking, what can I do with this? And it was really more about myself. It wasn't something that I was kind of rationalizing too much. It was more of, I don't know what to do with this. And then from there, I started kind of working to, how can this become something that is part of my work? Kind of as a way of accepting the emotion in a way, not trying to make it go away, but accepting that it's there, and sharing it with people. And what I wanted to do was really kind of share with people, but from a place where I'm not making it about me, really. It was more about the thing that, more about like the creatures or the thing that's happening.
Well, I personally don't think, just from my point of view, I don't see myself as an activist or kind of trying to do anything. I guess I don't think it's my role to try and save the planet in any way. I think I talk about these issues. I find them completely confusing and baffling. So I think there's a very rich territory there, and we kind of need to explore it in all its kind of idiosyncrasies and strangeness. I think maybe I'm slightly fatalistic about it, but the idea is like, obviously fundamentally a lot of these things, they come into the idea of like human preservation and self-preservation. Okay, it's the extending of the humankind, but at the end of the day, the world will continue without us. We'll die, it will grow again. New species will be birthed. So I think to me, it's just it's a way of us reflecting on a kind of our own current condition and understanding us right now in this moment in time.
Thank you. I think we are now on time, and that was like a very great note to close. So thank you so much. Thank you, Stefanie, for your wonderful moderation, and to our speakers. Our next session is with Ferdi Alici, one of the directors of Out Studio, who we are going to have an in conversation with him. So we are starting in 5 minutes. So if you want to take a break, please come back in 5.